Today we're going to start installing the quickwork, and we have pre-bent the pieces using the jig. This time we're going to cut them so that they don't go across the gun ports, except for the first one, as I want a nice clean bend coming off of the spoketings, and I'm using all my long clamps so that I want to see the recess that exists between the spoketing and the quickwork. And what we'll do is I'll show you quickly how I prepared the pieces. They're all roughly 6 inches in width and 2 inches in thickness. So up to my stock of juniper, and I have some real old juniper. This is 10 years old, so I know this is going to be very stable, and I'm going to get no bending at all when I take the pieces off. I'm going to first of all cut this down 12 inches in width, and then reduce that down to about 2.5 inches using the Proxon table saw, which is my workhorse for doing bulk heavy work. And now we'll cut this down to just about 2.5 inches. Now what I'm going to do is whip out a number of these, maybe as many as 20, and then I take them onto the Jim Burns thickness sander and take them down to the 2 inches. You might remember that I increased the size of the feeder plate to 14 inches. In hindsight, I think I should have taken this all the way to 20 inches, because it would have made, when I'm doing long pieces, so much easier to do. Now onto the Jim Burns table saw. Notice the little feather that's there to keep the boards from flipping up. I'm cutting these down at 9 inches, and then I'll go onto the thickness sander and reduce them accordingly. And to make sure that these planks are dimensionally exactly the same, I put them all together and I'm running them through the thickness sander. That guarantees that each one will be exactly the same width. Like the bottom spoke rings, we have pre-bent, and so we just need to put this in place, hold the clamp real nice and tight so that we get that flare on the front. And all we need to do now is to put the glue in. And you know that I'm doing this side because I've already done this side, made all the mistakes and errors, so that when I do this side it'll be perfect. And one of the little techniques I found is that sometimes when you're putting the clamps on and you place the piece in, it might rise a little bit and you'll get some spacing here. So you'll notice that I have a little piece of wood and I'm simply pushing that down to make sure I get a real flush joint between the spoke rings and the quickworks. We will continue cutting the pieces and putting them in. The second internal strake of the quickwork is exactly the same as the first. And the third one will go slightly above the gun ports, so that you'll find that we'll actually have some longer pieces being installed on the model. Although it's quite obvious that cleanup of the brushes when you're using both the paint or the glue, that if you want to continue having the use of these brushes, after every single use you have to go and take them to the washroom and clean them out to make sure there's no residue. Sometimes it may require that you actually put some alcohol, which will dissolve the PVA glue. But certainly in the case of the paint, the acrylic paint, simply putting water on it and washing it off is really the easiest way to keep good brushes. I'm told from some of my painter friends that sometimes even using warm water and soap and really washing the glue out helps them keep their brushes in top condition. Why I'm painting another streak is because I realize I'm going to be one blank short. Some of it is an error in cutting the individual pieces. I thought 7 was enough to do both sides, but it turns out 8 is the correct number. Before I put the last of the quickworks on, I want to clean up the openings. And so I'll take a sharp knife and cut both ends of the piece that extended and roughly shave them down, leaving a slight amount of the plank that I will take off with a file. I couldn't find anywhere in the book to tell me whether the red color should come through the sweep ports or not. I did write David, but haven't got a response yet. But it seems common sense to me that if you're going to have the red here, that it should extend through the sweep ports. So that's really what I'm going to do. And again, this same little paintbrush was ideal for doing it. You might find that you have to mask off the hole to make sure you don't get, certainly if you're coming from this angle, the possibility of you getting some red on the sides is pretty high. When you come from the other side, you're going to just get it on the inside, but you may not get every piece. So I tend to tack it from the back first, then I come and very carefully come in, holding my hand very steady. And then finally, if there's a lot of work to do, I will mask it off. Having said that, it is acrylic, so simply putting your hand in and wiping it off right after you put the paint down, it'll take the acrylic paint off the side of the boat. Certainly one of the most versatile tools that I use, or I use it sometimes once or twice a day, is this Proxxon pen sander. Really fantastic. And it has changeable bits, as some of you may know. And this smaller sanding disc is perfect for fitting into tight spaces like this. And I don't buy their fancy pads. I'll just buy a large sticky pad with the sanding grit I want and simply cut it out and stick it on a paper. Stick it on the piece. So it just uses any sticky back piece of sandpaper, and really a marvelous tool. Now we have to fit the both forward and aft blocks. These are the replaceable blocks, and boy, I've struggled with this, but I finally got it done. The first thing I did was to drill a hole from the outside, which lined it up pretty good. Again, making sure that the drill holes were well within where the final cut would be. Then I took a utility knife and cut it out, and then finally a file back and forward, taking out little bits every time until I got a perfect fit. So here they are, they move in and out, and I'll put the brass sheaves in later and shape the edges so that they're flush with the outside and the inside of the deck. When we fit the next piece, it'll fit very nicely and you get a nice clean line. Same thing here, but they must be flush on the inside. Now we're going to open up the hose holes. Now I'm going to move onto the shoreline lathe and make up the sheaves. They're 2.5 inches thick, and we need 6 of them on the model. Of course, I'm going to make much more than 6, somewhere between 12 to 20, because it's going to be very difficult to get them to the exact 2.5 inch thickness. The first thing we need to do is drill a center hole, and to do this, I have some carbide mill ends. This is, I think it's a 3/64. It's the smallest one I have. And again, I put some cutting fluid on it to preserve the bit. Then we drill the hole, and this hole matches to some of the pins that I have. I at first tried to put a little groove on the side of it using one of my cutting tools, but it just got too big. And so at the end of the day, I ignored that, used a file just to give it a slight bend. And it's difficult to say if this really was accurate, but it certainly was worth the effort. And then I just went and started cutting as many as I could, trying to keep the size to the 1.5 inch, because that is the size of the shim. But you realize it's an extremely thin piece. Of course, I had to drill over and over again to make sure that I kept the hole in the center of the piece. At the end of the day, I think it worked out pretty good. And these are the sheaves straight off the mill. They now need to be polished and cleaned up. and fit directly into the blocks. Because I had a jeweler's hand vise that I thought would hold these parts perfectly, and they were so small it didn't fit. So I'll have to solve that problem for holding these very fine parts while I clean them up and machine them. Of course, necessity is the mother of invention. So we just got a pin, and then we should be able to fit it. There we go. And now we clean the other side. Typical how us modelers solve all our problems. And we can't get it off, so that should get it off. What I've also discovered is this is a great way to get them to fit to the exact size. Zero to 4. So that's actually a little smaller than we need, but that'll work fine in the sheave holes. The next challenge is just opening up the blocks. Again, a very thin needle file. Of course, I've broken one already. Dead center. I'm using a thinner pin simply because you would really struggle to get it in the hole. And I'm going to put CA to lock it in place. It really doesn't matter if it spins or it doesn't spin, because it's a static model. So we'll glue both sides of the pin. Cut it off and then sand it. And it fits perfectly inside. I'll probably paint the face of this in the same blue and maybe push it back a little bit. There's just enough space to get the line in, and really that's perfect. So here is the pin. If you look at the back, you can see the two brass sheaves. Not so obvious in the front. And we just put it in. Perfect. I am really happy with how these two came out. So I'll start tomorrow and start working on the other side. And then I guess we'll bring this video to an end. The 20-minute mark is here. In the next video, we'll concentrate on completing all the internal planking in preparation for the deck beams, or the fore and aft. And then once we've worked all that out, start working on all the internal furniture and fixtures, both in the bow and the stern. So until then, We'll see you soon, and remember, as always, let's keep modeling.